there, it is Phil Ratcliffe, and welcome to another one of our episodes of our live broadcast. Today we are lucky to have Tom Holton with us with the Dublin Historical Society. Thanks so much, Tom, for being here today.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. So, really, let me give you a little bit of background about Tom. Tom's really passionate about this. We've been talking before we started. And he has a long history of working with Abbott in HR, having his own company, and then the last few years before, really being able to hit full-time for the Historical Society, working a couple grants for Columbus State Community College. So really a bulwark of the community, and taking care of people, and now taking care of the heritage of our people, especially in Dublin. So, Tom, maybe if we could, let's just talk about history a little bit. We were talking this before because I think people's perception of history is just that they thought it was boring from back in high school, and then they don't really get involved with it beyond that. Right. So, what would you say to that?
Those history teachers that we had in school might have tainted their perception of history. Maybe those teachers were a little bit boring, or the history class was a little bit boring. But what I like to do is think of Dublin as, in particular in Dublin, we have a great story to tell.
Yes.
And Dublin, just in the time I've been there for 30 years, Dublin was a village when we moved there with fewer than 10,000 people, or 11,000. And now it's a city of 45,000.
Wow.
So but in Dublin, one of the great things is you can still go to and stand in the place where the original settlers camped, and go to the spring where they drew their water for that campsite.
Wow, it hasn't been built over.
No, it hasn't been built over. You can still go right there on South Riverview Street.
What year was that when it was?
1803, 1801. Wow. It's that long ago.
Yeah.
So you can go to some of the places and get the real feel of what it was like. It's like in three dimensions.
That's
you can
not
see
long after we became a country.
No, yeah. So it's some people use the word granular. You can get a real feel and see some of the houses that were relatively new in those as back as 1820, 1840.
Okay, so I think we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, and you were surprised that I was a history major as an undergrad. And I think a lot of people, like we said, are a little bit jaded by they had one perception of history. And then, of course, most people pursue practical studies to get a job that's going to pay more. And I think it just gets lost and then, filed under that. But I think people really like history. I mean, we were talking, look at all the movies, like even the popular, DC and Marvel, where you're looking at, Captain America, World War II, and Wonder Woman in World War I, and all the different things, and people really enjoy it. Of course, now they see it in an entertaining light, and of course, people don't really have superpowers, at least convert ones like that, right? But we were talking about some people that probably did, maybe like Patton and MacArthur and what so, but they didn't shoot rays out of their eyes or anything like that. But history is, I think, really entertaining, and it's awesome, and it's real. It's where we came from, And in your case, it's there. You can go see where people came from, and you have a heritage. And I think today people don't have necessarily, I think people are trying to figure out, why do I matter? Why is it important? And a lot of people aren't connected to their work and what so, maybe like trades way long ago or what so. And you do have a connection to the past and to where we live and what so. In that diatribe. So tell us a little bit about some of the events and things that you guys do, exhibits, etc., around Dublin.
The Historical Society keeps in Dublin. We keep a house, and we call it a museum. And some people think of the museum. Oh my gosh, I don't want to go to a museum.
Like glass cases.
But it's right. Yeah. But it's a house that was built. Think of it when Abraham Lincoln was president. They started building the house. It took 5 years to build. And
5 years.
So it's a combination of museum and a sample of a farmhouse, a realistic farmhouse in that era. So we also use that as our office, so people can see what was it like to live in that era. Yeah. And it's right next to City Hall, 5200 Emerald Parkway, and there's a couple of barns associated with that. So what we like to do is invite people there so we can tell the story. You don't have to just walk through and say, oh, gee, there's an old table, there's an old chest of drawers. We like to tell the story of how the Kaufmans lived in that era. The Kaufmans built that house because they inherited some land, and they wanted to move from the village of Dublin and build a farm. So there's
be more self-sufficient.
Right, self-sufficient. It was quite an interesting story of how they wanted to build a new life from one lifestyle of being restaurant and lodging and tavern owners to building a farm. Who does that? At age 40 and age 50.
Sure.
So it's a great story and a great place. We'd like to show people that.
And then you guys do walking tours.
Walking tours to the historic district. There's still quite a few very interesting homes, old homes with great architecture within a good walking distance in the historic district in Dublin. Plus, we'll do some driving tours for people and around the reasonable, say, 45-minute distance of the radius of the historic district.
Wow. Now, I see you also brought, kind of a prop for us to see.
Right.
To see some of the technology that they had back then, right? So let's talk about that.
One thing we do, this is called a stereoscope. And what I was showing you before was, if you ignore this part of it for a moment and just look at this part that you put up against your forehead or against your face, this might look like a virtual reality device that we see today without the cords. But in 1900, this was their virtual reality because they didn't have computers, didn't have electricity, didn't have that kind of thing. But with these cards, this card happens to have a waterfall landscape scene, with this card and the lenses, they could look at a scene in 3 dimensions. So they could transport themselves to another place in 3D that they couldn't do otherwise in 1900.
And that's really cool.
It is really cool.
Because we think about people in the past, like they're like characters in books or whatever the case, but they were just like us.
They were.
We just have different technology. They had aspirations. They thought of ideas that are very similar. We can just carry them farther. Right. And so
they might have a box of cards like this that were landscapes or famous people or something like that. And so they would sit around and put the cards in and pass them around as the family sat around. That was their entertainment. And it took them to another place, just like virtual reality does today. So this is how we tell stories in the museum. That we, unfortunately, you have to use that word, but I'd like to have people come and talk to us and say, I'd like to help you tell stories like that to visitors.
Absolutely. And have kids have a connection, It's just like, have a garden in my backyard, not because I think I can grow food efficiently, but because I want my kids to know where it comes from and to see that they can do it. And then the same thing is, are we going to have our kids grow up and just think that this is how it was always? Like, no, people have worked hard for us to get to where we are and have the things that we have. And it's not only the truth, it's interesting if you tell it in the right kind of story for people to understand. So, this is kind of just throwing out there to you. It's like, what should people really know about the Dublin Historical Society and historical societies in general, about what you guys do, and how you keep the community connected?
Part of our mission or our purpose is to educate people about the history, but also to advocate with people like the local government to help preserve historic sites, historic buildings, to the extent we can, to make sure that we don't lose things.
Sure.
Certainly, we're up against developers. Sometimes up against the progress that the city needs to make or desires to make in order to advance the development. And so we find ourselves often advocating for
save something,
to help preserve a site or preserve a building, and help a homeowner, help a property owner. That's something we do sometimes. Help educate the public about the value of a site or of architecture. Sometimes we recently had a public presentation about the Hopewell Mound, less than a mile south of the Bridge Street development on the east side of the river. There's a mound that's 10,000. It goes 10,000 years old.
About that.
No, but very few people know about it.
I didn't even know that was there. I've been to the one that's out like past Zanesville or what's
Yes.
like when you go out 70 where they've got with the quarry, but I didn't even know about the one that's right up by Dublin.
And the city is going to incorporate that into a park before too long.
Awesome.
So it'll be preserved, we just wanted to make the public more aware of it. Now the city has bought the land, and we're just working with the city to help educate more people about it.
Wow. Well, that's great. You know, I mean, obviously we want progress, but not necessarily at the expense of our past.
Yes.
And it's kind of like Stephen Covey always used to say, there's generally a win-win
Somewhere.
if you would work hard enough to talk and understand other people's perspectives.
Right.
Or what. So it doesn't always have to be a win-lose situation, even though a lot of people push it that way.
That's right.
You know? So how can people get involved, you know, to help out or volunteer or contribute? Just be involved.
We'd like to have people go to our website. They're seeing it here as they look at your program.
DublinOhioHistory.org.
And on that they'll see how to contact us. We just put this. We just revised our website. It's just brand new
nice.
today.
I like the pictures. Yeah.
And there's some gaps on there. We're still working on it. But how to contact me, and there's a voicemail box that they can use, and an email. And what I will do is get in touch with them, take them on a walking tour or a tour through the house, and help them get excited about the variety of things we're doing, whether it's our photo and document archive project, or advocacy, or tours, be a guide, and to see what excites them.
Sure.
On the range of things we do, just to help them, first of all, learn the range of things, and then see what resonates with their interest.
What they'd like to do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be work. You
Exactly.
can have fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fun. You're not going to enjoy it if you're not having fun.
Sure. Absolutely. I think that's how everything should be. But
exactly.
Unfortunately, as we were talking about earlier too many people just make it about money.
That's true.
And we need finances. Obviously, that's kind of what we do.
That's true.
But I think it's more about being happy and being connected to our past.
Yes.
I think is a fulfilling part of life, even though there are probably too many people that ignore it, either consciously or subconsciously.
Well, last week we had Anna Leeper from the Arts Council.
Yes.
And she commented on some of the public art that we have. Many of those, I was counting them up afterwards. She did a tremendous job. And about 7 of the public art projects
historical sites too.
that are related to his history, Dublin history.
Oh, yeah.
The leather lip sculpture, the field of corn.
I love that one.
The watch house. They all have a tie to Dublin history. And so I include those on our driving tour. So it
does relate a lot. You guys do a good job in Dublin. I'd say you guys, and I'd say Westerville are really kind of active, like community-wise, the most of just about anybody.
Westerville has a tremendous history.
Yeah.
They all do.
Well, thanks so much for being in here, Tom. We very
Glad
much
to do it.
appreciate it. I think this is a really important subject that doesn't get enough media and press and what's on. Hopefully, some more of you will get involved. You are inspired, by our discussion and by a lot of the things that Tom and the Dublin Historical Society are doing. So contact them, get involved, go on a tour, go check out the Kaufman House. I think you'll really enjoy it. Thank you guys so much again for spending a part of your week with us. Join us next week. We have Genevieve of the Homeless Families Foundation coming in. And then the week after that, we're going to have Carolyn Husikin from BMI Credit Union to talk to us a little bit about the difference between credit unions and banks and how they help to serve their members in the community. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're having a fabulous week, and we'll see you next week.